Hello everyone and welcome to another HSMA Solutions video. This time we are going through the second task of the first exercise of Python Programming Part 2, HSMA 6 Session 1F. So we've already done the first exercise in the previous video. This was giving us a chance to play around with functions, and the second task is also just another chance to do a bit more work with functions, pair it up with some of the stuff we've done in previous sessions on lists, and we might even have a bit of a go with list comprehension. So let's take a look at task 2. We are being asked to write a function that takes as its input a list of numbers and will return two lists. One list is going to contain every even number that was in our original list, and one list is going to contain all of the odd numbers. Then we're going to randomly generate a list of integers, 1,000 of them. Those integers are going to fall between 1 and 100, and what we're going to do is use our new function to separate the odds from the even numbers and do a bit of printing of those results. So, where should we start? Well, before I do anything else, I'm going to make myself a list that I can use to test my function. So I'm going to put my sample list, and in it I'm going to put I'm going to actually turn it into a list by opening up my square brackets. I'm going to put in a bit of a mixture. I'm going to have, let's say, 31, 45, 22. I just want a nice mix of integer numbers that are even and some are odd. Don't need it to be too long, we just need to be able to check that the numbers work. And just out of interest, let's chuck in 0 and see what happens when we do that. So what I need to do now is I'm writing a function. Now, as a reminder, a function is a thing that allows you, well, it's a little bit of reusable code, effectively. So something like print in Python is a function, or something like randint, so where we generate a random integer, that's a function. It's something that is a little bit of code bundled up that allows us to do one thing and generally do it very well. So what we're going to do is write a function that is good at taking take in a single list and split it into two lists that we can use to separate even and odd numbers. That's its only job. We could string this together with lots of other different functions. We could use it as part of a bigger function because by itself it's maybe not that useful to us. But there are huge numbers of functions out there every time we import a library like the random library and get something out of there. We are pulling out a function that someone else has written for us. Python is all about saving time by using the very clever code of other people, and then over time you will be the person writing that very clever code that other people want to use as well. So anyway, with all that said, let's start writing our function. So when we're writing a function, we tend to use the def keyword, def, and this just basically says, I want to define a new function, thank you very much. So I'm going to call this separate odd and even numbers, and I'm going to pass in a list of numbers. So within these not square brackets, these brackets here, this is where I tell my function what I need it to expect to receive. Now, I don't have to tell it that it's going to be a list. I've called it list of numbers because that makes it a little bit easier when I'm using the function to know what I'm meant to be passing in. But Python wouldn't care if I entered an integer or a string. My function might not work, but it's not going to stop me. But all that said, all that we're doing here is passing something in that we can then use within our function. What I'm going to do then is come up with a way of creating a list of the even numbers and a list of the odd numbers. I want two separate things here. There's a couple of ways we could go about this. What I'm going to start off by doing is doing it in a for loop. So I'm going to create an empty list called even numbers, and I'm going to, just an empty list like this. The reason I'm creating an empty one is because I'm going to cycle through every number that is in the list of numbers we've passed to our function, and I'm going to get out just the even numbers and put them in that list. If they're not even, I'm not going to add them to that list. So what does this look like? So I'm going to say for number in list of numbers, if number modulus 2 equals 0, then I want to add this to my list of even numbers. So even numbers dot append number means add it to even numbers. And if it's not an even number, then we're going to add it to another list I'm going to create called odd numbers. So odd numbers dot, oh, I've got the S on odd number, dot append number. Now, before I do go any further, you're probably going, what on earth is this little bit doing? Why have you got a percentage sign? Where do percentages come into this? Well, they don't. Percentage is the modulus symbol. Modulus just means divide this number by another number and tell me what the remainder is. What is left over? So if I've got 2 and I'm trying to divide 6 by the number 2, I go 2, 4, 6, it goes in 3 times exactly, and I have 0 left over. If I'm trying to divide 7 by 2, I go 2, 4, 6. I can't do it again because I'll be up to 8 and that's too big. So I can go in 3 times and I've got 1 left over. Now, when I go up to the number 9, I can go in 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Okay, that gets me up to 8. I still have 1 left over. So this is a really handy way of telling whether a number is odd or even. Because if there is a leftover of 1 when we use the modulus number, if our remainder from this division is 1, that just means that the number will be odd. If the remainder is 0, it means that when we divide it by 2, so we're telling it what number we want to divide by, in this case 2, if we divide by 2 and there is nothing left over, it's gone in exactly, then that means that the number must be even. So just to demonstrate that this works, well, I am going to do, let's say, 6 modulus 2, and I get 0 back. I'm going to do 7 modulus 2, as we said, and I get 1 as my response. If I do 9 modulus 2, I get 1 as my response. 10 modulus 2, so an even number, I get 0 again. Now this works as well if I was to do 9 modulus 3. It goes 3 3s are 9. Okay, I now have an answer of 0. If I try and do 10, so it goes 3 3s are 9. Okay, and now I can't go any further, so I've got 1 left over. If it's 11, then I go 3 3 6 9, 2 left over. When we get back to 12, our answer will be 0 again. So let's get back our 2 lists. So we've cycled through in this code, we've gone through every list in our list of numbers. We've gone, please take this list if we were passing in our sample list, and gone, okay, for this number, please work out the modulus, and if the answer is 0, then add it to our even numbers list. If the answer is 1, so else, if it's not 0 basically, then please add it to our odd numbers list. What I shall now do is I want to return even numbers and odd numbers. So this return statement basically just says to Python, please, when you are done with this function, I want you to get to the end and I want you to spit out these results. I want you to spit out these variables so I can access them outside of the function. And one thing I've just realised I haven't really been explaining is all of this indentation. So when we're defining a function, everything that is indented like this, so I indent with a tab key, is just one space of indentation, one level of indentation. All of this now is part of my function. It will only be run in Python when I tell it that I want to use that function. So let's run it now. I've got my base environment chosen up here in the top right in VS Code. I'm going to run this and you will see that nothing happens. And that's because we haven't called the function yet. I'm going to do separate odd and even numbers. I'm going to say that my list of numbers, so this is the argument name that we specified here. I'm going to say list of numbers is equal to my sample list. Now, if you want to know a little bit more about how you can call functions, how you can, can we pass in just the list? Do we have to make it a variable? Do we have to have this equals bit, list of numbers equals? If you want to know more about that, pop back to the previous video, the part 1, task 1 of this exercise. I go into that in a lot more detail there. But for now, let's just execute this cell. Now we can see that what we've got out, which spat out some stuff here, we've got 22, 30, 98 and 0, so those are our even numbers, the first thing that was in our list on this return statement, and then we've got our odd numbers. So that's exactly what we were looking for. However, we can't now do anything else with these because we haven't saved them into something usable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's call it list of odd numbers. Oh no, now this is where you need to be careful. You need to match the order that the items are being returned in. So we've told our function, please return the even numbers first and the odd numbers second. So if I say list of even numbers and then a comma, list of odd numbers, and then I'll press equals. Now, if I press run again, you'll see we've gone back to not having anything spit out. That's because we've now saved these results to the variables. So we've saved the first list to list of even numbers, the second list to list of odd numbers, and therefore they won't print until we tell Python we want to actually explicitly do something with them. So let's do that next. I'm going to print, let's make an F string, and I'm going to say the even numbers from your list are, let's say list of even numbers. I'm going to print the odd numbers from your list are. Again, open our curly braces, put in our Python variable list of odd numbers. If I run this again now, you can see that we've got the even numbers from your list are 22, 30, 98 and 0. The odd numbers from your list are 31, 45 and 67. So I'll just recap a few little bits here. The nice thing about returning like this and then turning this into two separate variables when we call the function is that you can get more than one thing out of a function this way. It's very handy. We could do something else. We could return this as a list, and then actually when we go here, we'll call it list of lists. I'm just going to comment these out a second, and I will show you what we get if we do it like this. So print list of lists, and you can see we've gone back to actually we've got our outer list here, and within this we've got our first list, which is our even numbers, our second list, which is our odd numbers. Now, if I access the first element of this list, you can see that we've just got our even numbers because that was the first thing in the list that we returned. So we could just actually, if I get rid of this bit, I won't get rid of it, but what I will show you is if we do list of lists and list of lists again, this time I will pull out the first thing from our returned list and the second thing from our returned list. Remember, Python counts from 0. And you can see we've got the same output again. So this time we've printed our output, our list of lists. We haven't had to separate it into two separate return bits at this point, two separate variables coming from our function. Instead, we print the we do the hard, heavy lifting during our print statement. We say get out the first element of our return and get out the second element. Now, either of these are absolutely fine. There's really not much between them. It depends what you're trying to do. I can't give you a hard and fast rule as to which one is best. Use which one makes the most sense for you for now, and just be aware that both options exist, and you can take it even further. You can return all sorts of things from functions, but that's what we'll do for now. I'm going to pop back to I'm just pressing Control Z to go back through my different bits of iterations of my code. I'm going to save that and just check it's still working. So I quite like this return even numbers and odd numbers. I think it's quite easy to follow. I find it quite helpful to then be able to look back at the function definition, this little bit here, and go, oh, okay, yeah, it's going to return the even numbers first and the odd numbers first. And the odd numbers second even, sorry. Now, what else did we need to do? We needed to randomly generate 1,000 integers between 1 and 100 and populate a list of numbers with them. So at the moment we've just been passing in our sample list, and we don't want to do that anymore. We were just using that to quickly check that the function would work. So let's create a list of integers. We'll make that an empty list. And what we're going to do is use a for loop again. We're going to say for for say for number in range 1000, because we wanted 1000 numbers. The number in range 1000, please add to my list of integers. So we're going to append a number between an integer number between 1 and 100. So I'm just going to use the random function, the random library. We did actually import this earlier when we were doing exercise task 1 in this exercise, but I'll just show you the code here as well. So we'd just import random before we did anything else. I've done this in a separate code cell just for efficiency. No point importing it every time we run this code cell while we're testing. So list of integers, append random dot randint, which is basically I want to use the random integer function from the random package, and I want the number to be between 1 and 100. And we've got 1000 numbers, so it's going to be a bit long, this list that we print out, but just to show you, let's print out the list of integers. I'm also going to quickly just highlight this whole lot. I'm going to press Control and /. This will comment out the entire section of code while I just focus on this little bit. So you can see we've got a nice long list. All of those numbers look roughly like they're in the right region. I'm just going to check that our list is the right length. So I'm going to do print len list of integers. Let's have a look at that. Yep, we've got 1000 items in our list. I'm also going to print, let's see if I can, do we have a max method on lists? We do not. Okay, that's fine. So let's try this instead. Print max list of integers. Does this work? Yep, so we can see the highest number in our list of integers is 100. We can see the lowest number in our list of integers is 1. While we're here, can we calculate the mean? No, so we don't get mean as standard. We'd have to use something else to do that. I was just interested to see what happens if our average is sitting around where we would expect it to, but that's for another video. So we've got our list of integers, the list of random integers that we wanted to use. So now I'm going to highlight all of this again by just sort of clicking and dragging, left click and drag to select all of this code. I'm going to press Control and Control and /, holding them together, and this will now make all of this code available for me to use again. So I'm going to this time take our list of integers, because we no longer are using our sample list when we call the function, and we'll get it to print. And we can see now we've got a much longer list of even and odd numbers from our function. So I think we've actually done everything we needed to for this one, but while we're here, I'm just going to show you another way that we could have done our for loops. So where we're doing these for number in range 1000, and also where we're doing the even numbers dot append. We could use list comprehensions instead to do this. Now, a list comprehension is just a really neat feature of Python that allows us to do actions on lists to create other lists, effectively. That's one of their main uses. So I'm just going to copy all of this code and paste it in. Get rid of, actually no, I'll leave that in there for now. And I will show you the way that we would write these as a list comprehension. So to get random integers between 1 and 100, to get 1000 of them, we will go for range 1000, and we will do, let's say x. And let's try this. I'm just going to comment this bit out again, Control and /, and we will uncomment this bit. So Control and /, while we've just got a single, while we've just clicked onto a line, we'll uncomment it. Now, doesn't like this. Why does it not like this? Oh, yep, no, I've written this all wrong. That's why. 4x in range 1000. There we go. So now we can see that we have another very long list. Now, why does this work? What we're saying is for the numbers 1 to 1000, so go through 1000 times, and each time you go through, generate me a random number between 1 and 100 and put it in my list, please. my list called list of integers. So that's all we're doing. When we say range 1000, we're just meaning it's a quick shorthand for saying do whatever code is here 1000 times, please. Now, on to our even and odd numbers. So we no longer actually, we're not going to need all of this. I'll comment that out second. So even numbers, this time we want to actually refer to our list of numbers. So we're going to say for number in list of numbers. So first we'd just print, if we did this, we would get every number in our list of numbers. All it says is go through every number in our list of numbers and please put that number in my list, in this new list that we're creating called even numbers. So both of these are going to actually start out the same. The difference is here we're going to put if number modulus 2 is 0. So remember when we were getting even numbers before, we were only including something in our even number list if the number was, if we calculated the modulus of the number and got 0 as the response, so that there is no remainder. Now I'm going to do it again here, but this time for an odd number, we would expect the modulus to be 1, the result when dividing by 2 to always be one number left over. So let's get rid of this little bit. Let's get rid of this little bit. Oh, no, did I want to get rid of all of that? I did want to get rid of all of that. Not that. There we go. So I'm going to run this again and hopefully, oh, something's broken. So we've got our nice list of integers. Why? Oh, I forgot to put if here. That's what it is. So it's important if you're doing this kind of include this number in our new list if, it's rather useful to put the if. But we want if number divided by 2 or modulus 2 is 1. Try that again. There we go. So this time you can see that every number in our even list is even and every number in our odd list is odd. And these two bits of code are functionally absolutely identical.